Okay, I'm Sam Huckabee. I'll be presenting over water scarcity. So first I'll be talking about physical versus economic water scarcity, which can be confused at some points. For physical water scarcity, the first thing that comes to mind is wastefulness. Now, a lot of people may think, what are some ways we can fix this? What are some different ways of physical water scarcity? The other one is overuse. So either most people are being too wasteful with their water, or they're overusing their water, which can kind of be combined in some ways, as people may run the shower too long, or leave the sink on too long, or wash too little amount of clothes. Those are just some in-home water scarcity ideas that happen with physical water scarcity. For economic water scarcity, it's basically all about cost. So when you think about cost, I'm talking about filtration plants. That is the main cost for when you come to a country trying to enhance their ability to stop water scarcity. It's all about getting viable mechanisms at a cheap cost to filter this water. There was an important quote that I put in my paper. It was by T. Boone Pickens. It says that water is the new oil. And that's talking about cost as well, where water is becoming very financially important for many countries in the sense that it can actually make them a lot of money. They charge higher amounts for water and water bottles. You know how we've been having problems in Flint, Michigan and stuff like that. They can make more money that way. The next thing I'd like to talk about is population and how that affects water scarcity. My first point would be an increase in population. Every day we have more people coming into this world. It's an increase in population. That causes a greater need for water. And in many of these areas, population distribution is becoming more and more dense. People are moving into Kansas City area. There's over 600,000 people in Kansas City area now. People are moving to Chicago areas, New York areas, bigger cities like that, which cause a higher need for water, which they do not have. Many of these are entering water scarcity in a way because of the great move that people are making to these bigger cities for the glamour or for jobs, because many of the markets are in these areas. And with greater population coming in, we need more water filtration plants. Water's been used to run many machines as well. Machines have become inefficient in this way, so that's another thing we can work on. And just overall, supply and demand is increasing for water with population increase. So some statistics that come with this. The first statistic would be 2/3 of the world. 2/3 of the world right now, going into 2025, will be in water scarcity. So that is a large amount of people in water scarcity, including most people outside of the United States and third world countries especially. 3% is fresh water. So when you think of ocean water and the vast majorities of water, those are unusable by humans in the sense of eating and drinking. Only 3% is actually fresh water. 60 to 70% of this fresh water is in glacier form. So that gives us only 30% of the 3% water available to us we can actually use. Now, when we're looking at, and you think of where's all this water coming from, it is not from our lakes. Only 0.3% of the fresh water is actually from our lakes. So this just shows the importance that we need to put on protection and preservation of our water. Climate change. Climate change is a very interesting idea that people have been throwing around for quite some time now, and how it can cause pollution. Pollution goes along with global warming and drought, basically. So with drought, many of the lakes or groundwater level aquifers are being degraded. So the water, with less snowfall, less precipitation, the water begins to degrade. And the degrading is basically lowering oxygen concentration of the water. So this water becomes unusable and becomes stagnant water without precipitation and snowfall, without the movement of the hydrologic cycle. So the melting of glaciers, how is this affecting us? Well, climate change is heating everything up. The glaciers are starting to melt. So you would think, good, we're getting this water from our glaciers, the 60 to 70% that's controlled in that. but it's going into our oceans, which in turn make them overflow and run over into our freshwater sanctuaries to where they become polluted and cause this water to now be unusable by us to eat or drink. So dictatorships, I found this kind of interesting, reading about how people get into water scarcity. And I found this to be very important now as countries as Venezuela are having these types of problems. So contamination and uprisings that are happening. So these dictators have begun to withhold water from their people to try to get them to obey. So what's been happening is these people are rising up by burning trash in the streets, by blocking roads, by doing things of this manner to try to get their water back. But in essence, they're only hurting themselves because they're contaminating their water. So it's a lose-lose for both scenarios here, as the dictatorship's not really getting what he wants out of it, and the people are hurting themselves in a way that they don't understand. How does the water affect the body? And this is a very important one as we think about, we're losing water, so how is it going to affect us? The first thing to think about is your body just starts breaking down. When you don't get enough water, your kidneys and your heart are the first thing that are really affected. So your kidneys try to retain as much water as they can so that your blood does not have to concentrate. Now when this starts to happen, the water becomes scarce, you don't have enough water to drink, you become dehydrated. Your heart has to pump this concentrated blood all over throughout your body, which causes it to speed up, and this is when collapse starts to happen. You think about not having enough water, hunger comes with this. And hunger not only in people, but in your livestock. So we don't have enough water, our livestock begins to die, and then our food source is gone. So when you think about how important water scarcity can be, our bodies need it, everything needs it to survive. Our livestock, that is our main source of food, and that is the main source of food for many third world countries who have to grow their own. Lastly, it affects the brain. As you lose water, water constricts. Once you lose water, your brain starts to constrict. And when it constricts, you start to lose focus. You stop being able to make decisions on the go. Your brain you just become less able with your brain. Preservation of water. So how can we combat some of these things? The first and important thing is education. Many of these third world countries are uneducated in how to do this. And when you think about what should we be educating them about, it's about filtering, recycling, farming, and in-home and just in your community areas of improvement that we can do. So how do we protect the groundwater? One thing that comes to mind is building dams right above aquifers, because many of the problems is we have water running right over these aquifers that aren't sinking down into them. So people have come up with the idea of putting dams above these, letting the water sit there and it soaks down into the aquifers. And this can be very, very important for water preservation if water scarcity keeps becoming a worse and worse problem for us. Another thing we can do to protect our groundwater is to take our trash to the dump, not throw it out in the back in the creek or throw it out in just a dumpster pile you may have behind your house. I know many third world countries don't have these sites to do this, but if you're able to be able to do this, then you definitely should, because this protects your water. Another thing is grass. Get a style of grass that does not take up much water. Also, the chemicals on the grass, this can be diminishing to our water as well as the chemicals run off into the water. So if you can get a type of grass that doesn't take a lot of chemicals and take a lot of water, this could help preserve our groundwater as well. Agricultural advances, and this is the biggest part, because agriculture uses about 70% of the fresh water that is used. There are 3 systems I have up here: the Rankine, hydroponics, and drip irrigation system. The one you guys probably have heard about is drip irrigation system. It's when you don't have to use flooding techniques to where you flood the rows of crops, whether instead you drip water down directly onto them, which saves a lot of water. This is a great thing that's been starting to happen more and more frequently. Hydroponics is a newer thing. They're testing this in controlled environments right now. It's where the roots are directly inserted by a probe, which nutrients and water are then able to be put directly into the root, which could be a great thing. They're trying to work on costs and stuff like that. Ranke is probably the most advanced system so far. They've been testing this. Its system has the ability to detect weather. So if it gets too cold or too hot, it can shut off the system to not allow freezing or overheating of the crops. It also has an app, so it has the ability to tell farmers, what their statistics are and what's the best way that they should be watering their plants or putting nutrients into their plants. And with that, you can share that with farmers around you on this app that allows them to know the best techniques as well. So there are many new advances coming in the agricultural world, but when you think about what can you do at home, in-home conservation, I touched on this a little bit earlier. You could turn off the shower so the shower's not running the full time. You wash your hair, turn it off, turn it back on to rinse off type of deal. You can get more efficient dishwashers, more efficient washer and dryers that can really decrease water use. There was a statistic I looked up. If water drips from a pipe, just a constant drip per second, it can lose 2,700 gallons per year. So that's huge. And this was the biggest thing that this paper touched on, was check your pipes frequently, because that is the biggest form of water loss for in-home conservation. In conclusion, take initiative. We can all do our part in saving the world. We can all do our part in turning off the water while we're brushing our teeth. There's many little things you can do, and it will all add up. If we all, take a step forward in the right direction, then this could really help us eliminate water scarcity. It's my bibliography, and that's it. Thank you.